Okay, so in the last video, I started talking about how we make choices when it comes to training ourselves to recognize danger, and that the fight-flight response is not fight or flight, but it's fight-flight. In other words, whenever we sense danger, we have a choice of whether we are going to run or whether we're going to fight, or a combination of the two. The point is through training, you can learn to kind of run through those different choices. And the key is you really want to make the choices very simple. The good Dr. Riggio, who I always talk about, always talks about this in his own training when he's training people. And one of the things he tries to get them to do is to make binary choices, to try to not overcomplicate the decisions they make. But in order to get to that place, you have to train yourself. So in this instance, what I'm going to get into, I'm going to talk about and give you an idea of how to do that. So in this instance, we're talking about perceptions shape our thoughts and actions. And I actually took this from a guy who did a presentation on this, Dr. Andrew Huberman. He runs the Fear Clinic out there at Stanford University. He does a lot of work with SOCOM, very similar to a lot of stuff that I've done with the good Dr. Riggio when he talks about how perceptions shape our thoughts. It was actually Dr. Riggio and a lot of his stuff that led me to Dr. Andrew Huberman. So, and one of the things he uses, and I like this because I think it really points this out well. So, let's say you're on a safari and you're on the Serengeti and you see a lion out there, you're on safari, you're hanging out by the Range Rover, and you see a lion kind of walk around like this. You might even be a little in awe, but you're probably not afraid. But, you're paying attention, right? Now, let's say in this situation, for some reason, the lion turns and now he's kind of walking easy, but he's looking right at you and your entourage. Okay, you might be a little more concerned, but you might be still in the freeze stage here because you don't know what the lion's going to do. So you're not going to make any sudden moves because you don't want to tick him off either. You don't want to startle him and make him think you're a threat. Okay, now in this situation, for whatever reason, he perceives you as a threat. He's coming after you. You probably are thinking about running or getting back inside that vehicle as quickly as you can. Because, as you know, it doesn't take long for the lion to get on you. And it's going to go bad no matter what. Even if you have a gun, contrary to popular belief, lions are not that easy to kill. If you've ever known anyone who's ever been on a safari or on a lion hunt, even the animals that lions kill are not easy to kill. So, you might want to think about getting back in that vehicle. Okay, now, in this situation, okay, you got to fight. You got to do something. Because you're going to be dinner or you're going to get mauled. So you got to fight. And kind of the point of this exercise is to just make you aware that, it's not just we just start turn tail and run. We actually make decisions. We're always thinking. So we're actually making decisions. And depending on what you understand, depending on how well you've been trained, whether it's formal training, whether it's informal training, whether it's just through observational learning, somewhere along the way, you figured out how to respond to these situations. And this is the whole purpose of training. Training in its technical term is to cause a change in behavior. So the idea is you want to change the way you process fear and manage fear. You can't get rid of all fear. You want to try to reduce as much irrational fear as possible and get rid of it as quickly as you can. But you want to then focus on those things that are dangerous, because now you have something real to work with. You could figure out what to do. So in this situation, okay, maybe you probably got to fight. It may be the only chance you have. Me personally, I'm going to fight. And the reason is the best chance I have of probably surviving is trying to fight, or at least fight off long enough to get into a vehicle. If you don't fight, you're definitely dead. And that's just the point I'm making on that. And so the final point on this, because I think this is important, is remember, the stimulation of the amygdala also creates powerful, powerful emotions. And that's where a lot of retention, and also the root cause, I believe, of a lot of phobias. People have a bad experience at a very young age, and as a result of that bad experience, if they never kind of rationally, process it and recognize it, it carries over. It stays with them. And it doesn't matter. I don't care if they're 50, 60 years old. I personally saw when I was in the Marine Corps, when we would do night patrol, people who you could tell were afraid of the dark. People, in their early 20s, trying to become Marine officers, and you could tell they were afraid of the dark. And a lot of that is because many of them, especially if they lived and grew up in inner cities, have never been out in the woods like that late at night. I went to school in Oklahoma, so believe me, you spend a lot of time, especially if you've gone hunting, walking around the woods late at night, coming back from a hunt. So I get it. I understand why they're like that, but until they kind of processed it and realized what was there in the daytime is there at night. And yes, there are things that could hurt you in the evening, limited visibility, things of that nature. I get that. But the point is that, by processing things and understanding them in the proper context, we can learn how to overcome this stuff. Later on, we're going to get into what is called progressive desensitization. And this is a technique that we use in Warrior Flow, where we train people to overcome fear. In other words, nobody wants to get punched in the face, for example. But a lot of that is the fear of getting hit and thinking you're going to break like glass, especially if you've never been hit before. But once you teach people, give them an appreciation of what it's like to be hit, and also an appreciation that it's not the worst thing that ever happened in the world, you can then start chipping away at that apprehension and fear. And once I found that you show them how to effectively deal with people trying to hit you, regardless of what they're throwing, where you can neutralize it, provided you train yourself properly, what happens is that fear in many cases goes away. So hopefully this kind of enlightened you. We're going to continue to build on this theme as we go along in this course throughout the training. But just understand this is kind of the preliminary stuff, but these are important things. You don't have to be a neuroscientist to understand this, but you need to understand it enough on a layman's terms or layman's level to be able to teach it also to other people.